So I recently finished reading Dostoevsky's The Idiot, and I thought I would make a short video explaining some of the psychology behind one of its main characters, and also the character I found most interesting, Nastasia Filipovna. I think what I find most interesting about Nastasia as a character is that she is simultaneously presented as a very smart but unfortunate woman who has been used and abused throughout her life, but she's also verging on evil, regularly humiliating and destroying the relationships of the people around her. So in this video, I aim to analyse what Dostoevsky is trying to communicate to the reader through his depiction of Nastasia Filipovna, and how this relates to some of the main themes in the novel. But first, in order to make my argument, it's worth quickly summarising Nastasia's role in the plot. So two warnings beforehand. Obviously there's going to be some heavy spoilers ahead, but also I'm potentially going to butcher a lot of the Russian pronunciations of these names. First published in 1869, The Idiot follows the story of Prince Mishkin, a young epileptic man who has just returned to Russia after spending several years in Switzerland, being treated and recovering from his illness. Prince Mishkin is extremely earnest, having a kind of childlike innocence. He is unable to hide how he is feeling, trusts nearly everyone, and is extremely forgiving. Because of this earnest innocence, he often commits social faux pas, and it is for this reason he is mocked and called an idiot. However, although he is perceived as an idiot, many characters find themselves drawn to him and his good-natured personality, seeing a kind of beauty in his simplicity. They respect that he never deceives and sees the best in people. When Prince Mishkin arrives back in Russia, he finds himself in the midst of a love triangle between the beautiful Nastasia Filipovna and two men fighting for her hand in marriage, Rogozin and Ganya. Nastasia's life up until this point has been one of misfortune and tragedy. Although of noble birth, she was orphaned at the age of 7 and then went to live with a guardian called Totsky. Totsky is a rather unpleasant chap who sees the developing beauty of Nastasia as an opportunity to groom her into a wife when she becomes of age. He showers her with material gifts and possessions in hope that he can win her over to eventually become his wife. But Nastasia is very intelligent, and she sees right through this and resents Totsky for it. She accepts and enjoys the wealth of Totsky's gifts, but deliberately makes his life as difficult as possible. Before long, Totsky starts to believe that Nastasia's behaviour is more trouble than it's worth, and so fashions a deal with her now suitor Ganya, where he offers to pay Ganya in order to marry Nastasia and take her off his hands. The particularly vain Ganya accepts, despite secretly hating Nastasia. Ganya is a man who perceives himself as more intelligent and more original than he truly is, and accepting the money is a way for him to socially climb to what he perceives as his deserved place at the top of society is. Nastasia is no fool and recognises all of this playing out in front of her, understandably making her deeply resentful to a society that continually treats her as an object. However, although resentful, her mistreatment has infiltrated her own psyche and she's come to see herself as a worthless object as well. Rogozin, on the other hand, is manically in love with her. His love for Nastasia is depicted as more of an obsession. He comes across as an addict who is single-minded in his pursuit of obtaining his desired fix, Nastasia's hand in marriage. This single-minded pursuit is so intense that he's even certain that Nastasia doesn't love him, and that a companionship with her couldn't lead to happiness because of this. However, much like a drug addict, the known hardship that will follow from obtaining his fix is still better than the misery of living a life without it. Because of this untamed desire mixed with his drunkenness, Rogozin is depicted as an erratic minor criminal who is followed around by a gang of other drunks causing mischief. The love triangle between Nastasia, Ganya and Rogozin comes to head at a birthday soiree thrown for Nastasia. It is planned at this soiree that Ganya will propose to Nastasia and then claim his monetary reward from Totsky. However, he has been having doubts leading up to the event. Prince Mishkin is also there. He and Nastasia met earlier that day, and she had made a lasting impression on him. Simultaneously enticed by her beauty and pitying the situation she found herself in, Prince Mishkin appeared to instantly fall in love with her, and hence gatecrashes her birthday soiree with the intention of telling Nastasia not to marry Ganya, as he is only interested in the money. When he arrives, Nastasia lets him in and tells him she is happy he came despite not originally being invited. Mishkin replies in timid earnestness that she is utter perfection, to which Nastasia replies that he won't be able to think of her as perfection after this evening. The soiree kicks off with some drinks, and eventually the guests reluctantly partake in a game, at Nastasia's insistence, where they must detail the worst thing they have ever done. All the guests, including Totsky, tell muddled stories of supposed misdeeds that actually reflect well on the person committing the crime. Totsky's inability to admit any wrongdoing in his life in particular riles Nastasia, who was likely trying to coax him into admitting his mistreatment of her. As a result of her disgust toward her guests, she turns towards Mishkin and asks whether she should marry Ganya, and that she will do whatever Mishkin says. Mishkin replies that she should not, and therefore, despite much protest from Totsky and Ganya, she denies his marriage proposal. At this moment, Rogozin and his band of drunks arrive at the party with 100,000 rubles. Rogozin's intention is to buy Nastasia's hand and keep her from marrying Ganya. At this, Nastasia explodes into a speech, expressing her utter dismay at the fact that Ganya was willing to accept money to let a woman like her into his honourable family despite not loving her. She then reveals that Totsky had groomed and slept with her when she was a young girl, only then to leave and chase other women. The only reason this marriage had been set up was because Ganya will do literally anything for money and status. She goes on to say that she will now take her deserved place living on the streets, as no one would want to marry her now. She is, of course, wrong, however, as Prince Mishkin then steps forward, asking for her hand, claiming that she does not deserve all the blame that falls upon her, and that he has just received an inheritance which he intends to support her with. In a kind of amazed fever, Nastasia accepts, but eventually reveals she does not feel herself worthy of a man like Prince Mishkin. He deserves someone more respectable, and as a result, despite always dreaming of a man like the prince, she self-sabotages the marriage and leaves with Rogozin. As she leaves, she cruelly signals out Ganya, mocking his greed by throwing the 100,000 rubles onto the fire for him to retrieve. So, I think it's worth pausing here for a second and reflecting on the title of this video, Wrestling with God. I picked this title as I believe the story of Nastasia Philippovna is one of her wrestling with her conscience to pick which path she takes in life. The decision that she is making is not some abstract utilitarian moral hypothetical that modern philosophers like to think make up ethical life. Instead, this is a deep-rooted struggle of faith. Throughout Nastasia's life, she has experienced nothing but cruelty and hardship. She has been abandoned, used, and generally treated as an object. She's been given absolutely no reason to believe in the goodness of her neighbour nor the beauty of the world she inhabits. All her experience and her reasoning could have only brought her to one conclusion, that the natural order of things is one of power and there is no innate value to the world or the people that inhabit it. And once one has this worldview, they gain one very satisfying and powerful conviction, that their actions sit beyond what others believe to be good and evil. In Dostoevsky's own words in The Brothers Karamazov, if there is no God, then everything is permitted. See, to have faith in God, particularly within Dostoevsky's Orthodox tradition, is to believe that there is a paradise available to all who seek it, and the evidence and pathway to paradise can be revealed to us within the goodness and beauty of God's creation. If you have no faith, and see no good nor beauty in God's creation, then there is no paradise to be guided toward. There is no need to choose one course of action over another, other than to satisfy yourself. And when life has shown you nothing but cruelty, the most satisfying thing for yourself might be to stick 2 fingers up at the world and cause as much havoc as possible. Nastasia didn't have faith in the goodness and value of the world, and neither did she believe in the goodness and value of herself, as can be seen when she says things along the lines of her belonging on the streets. That is, until she met Prince Mishkin. Prince Mishkin's title of the idiot is awarded to him through his inability to lie. He is a type of childlike innocence and goodness, and I wouldn't be the first commentator to suggest that he's supposed to represent Christ in the story. We get the impression that Nastasia is drawn to the purity and honesty of Mishkin. He's the first person to interact with her who has no ulterior motive behind the contents of his words. Because of this, when they meet at the soiree and he tells her that she is utter perfection, there is no doubt that he means it. And as the soiree continues, Mishkin's belief in the goodness of Nastasia does not waver either, and he continues to say that she is not to blame for the trouble she finds herself in. The unconditional love that Prince Mishkin shows Nastasia is the first time someone has treated her as a person rather than an object that can be utilized for self-gain. Dostoevsky groomed her to please his own sexual desire and then attempted to sell her to Ganya, who was ready to treat her as a burden or debt necessary for his own societal gain. And finally, Rogozin's obsession is completely independent of her feelings to him, and therefore does not grant her the agency of an autonomous human being. The love that Mishkin shows her is pure and is not dependent on self-gain. This sparks a faint light within Nastasia's soul. A faint glimmer of hope granted by Mishkin's love represents a world where she and the world she finds herself in both have value. It is the beginning of a faith in the possibility that things could get better, and perhaps paradise is also open to her. Nastasia's journey is therefore the story of someone wrestling deep within their soul, choosing either to turn oneself towards the light and bear the responsibility that comes with this, or stay festering in the dark, seeing no value in the world and therefore being free of moral responsibility. Characters in Dostoevsky novels are not merely agents and personalities who independently make decisions that are either good or bad. Their decisions are wrapped up into their personalities. Through their decisions, we learn what personality that character has. It is like the decisions themselves represent a type of spirit, and then those who make those decisions can be inhabited by the spirit they represent. Take Rogozin, the drunk. We see him as quite tender towards Mishkin at times. There appears to be trust and genuine friendship. However, Rogozin's decisions are always motivated by desire. The desire to be intoxicated and free from responsibility of consciousness, or the desire for Nastasia Filipovna. Because of the decisions motivated by desire, we see the tender and genuine Rogozin slowly eaten up by the spirit of desire. He becomes the embodiment of the spirit, and therefore a representation of the devil. We now have two clear poles that Nastasia finds herself in between of. She can either turn herself toward the light of Prince Mishkin's or Christ's unconditional love, which grants her the autonomy for moral decision-making, or she can fester in the dark with the devil, chained to the status of an object, but free to live for herself. Ultimately, at the end of her soiree, she chooses to walk the path of the devil. Throughout the rest of the novel, we see Nastasia embody the spirit of the decision made at the soiree. Free from the love of Mishkin and the autonomy of personhood, she bears no responsibility for her actions and lives for herself, humiliating and shaming those who have wronged her, deliberately sabotaging the relations between Mishkin and Agla through jealousy, and just generally putting two fingers up to the world she chose to see as worthless. Nastasia's lack of faith is depicted at the end of the novel in her death at the hands of the devil, concluding the tragic tale of a life lived without faith and her inner struggle with God.